In Season 15 of Gold Rush, veteran miner Rick Ness is facing one of the most critical challenges of his career and possibly his final season in the Klondike. With a mining operation that has only just begun to find its rhythm again, Rick's entire future now hinges on a bureaucratic decision that's out of his hands. Earlier this season, the Yukon Water Board denied Rick's application for a new water license, an essential permit that allows miners to divert water for sluicing and reclamation work. His current license, which applies to his Duncan Creek claim, is set to expire on April 8, 2025, leaving him with only months to navigate a complicated approval process. Without a valid license in place by the next mining season, Rick's entire operation could grind to a halt. This devastating setback came just as things were starting to turn around for Rick. After stepping away from mining for a time due to personal and financial struggles, Rick returned in Season 15 with a leaner, more focused crew and a renewed determination to succeed. He has a strong team, dependable equipment, and a promising piece of ground. But none of it matters without water. With his back against the wall, Rick made an unexpected but telling move. He sought out the advice of his former boss and longtime friend, Parker Schnabel. Though they've followed very different paths since Rick left Parker's crew to start his own operation, the respect between the two miners remains. Rick visited Parker not for a favor, but for perspective from someone who understands the harsh realities of mining in the Yukon. Rick explained the situation. While his operation at Duncan Creek was running smoothly, the looming expiration of his water license put everything in jeopardy. The Yukon Water Board's denial meant that even if he wanted to keep mining next year, he might not be legally allowed to. Parker, who has battled his own share of regulatory delays and red tape, understood the gravity of the problem. He told Rick that many miners in the region were facing similar delays, and while he didn't pretend to have all the answers, he encouraged Rick to do everything possible to push forward. Time, he reminded him, was not on his side, but determination might be. Their conversation turned deeper as Rick opened up about his journey, his past mistakes, his regrets, and the hard-won lessons that brought him back to the Yukon in the first place. He admitted that he had made poor decisions in the past, both personally and professionally, but emphasized that he wasn't running from anything anymore. "This is my shot," Rick told Parker. "I've worked too hard to get back on my feet just to watch it slip away because of a piece of paper." There's a painful irony to Rick's current dilemma. This year marks the final payment on his Dominion Creek claim. After years of blood, sweat, and setbacks, he finally owned his own piece of ground. But without a water license, that ownership could be meaningless. The land may be his, but he won't be able to mine it. Parker, recognizing the determination in Rick's voice, encouraged him not to let the uncertainty paralyze him. He advised Rick to treat this season like it might be his last, to push harder than ever and get as much gold out of the ground as possible, while he still can. "You're a survivor," Parker reminded him. "I told you that 5 years ago, and it's still true today." After their talk, Rick walked away with a heavier heart but also with a clearer sense of purpose. Later, he reflected on their conversation and what it meant to him. "Parker's right," Rick said. "This isn't just another season, it might be our last. My livelihood is on the line, and nobody is going to fight harder for it than me." Rick knows that the odds are stacked against him. The water license decision is out of his control, and the time to change the outcome is running out. But what is in his control is how he responds. "If this is our last chance to mine Duncan Creek," he said, "then we're going to make it count. We're aiming for at least 1,500 ounces this season, hopefully more. I'm all in." For Rick Ness, Season 15 of Gold Rush isn't just about the gold, it's about redemption, resilience, and the fight to keep a dream alive. He's not the same man who once walked away from the spotlight. This is a leaner, wiser, more determined Rick Ness, and he's staking everything on one last shot. With Parker's words of encouragement echoing in his mind, and the clock ticking down on his license, Rick is ready to dig deep, literally and figuratively. Whether or not he secures the water license in time, one thing is clear: Rick Ness is going down swinging. For longtime fans of Gold Rush, the relationship between Rick Ness and Parker Schnabel has always been one of the most compelling and complicated dynamics in the series. From close collaborators to estranged rivals, and now, back to something resembling mutual respect, their journey together has mirrored the highs and lows of life in the goldfields. Before Rick ever ran heavy equipment in the Yukon, he was playing stand-up bass for the .357 string band. It was Parker Schnabel who first spotted something in him beyond the music. He saw potential. Knowing that Rick had experience working with machinery at his father's construction company, Parker convinced him to join his crew. That decision would shape the next chapter of both their lives. In the early seasons, Rick quickly became one of Parker's most trusted crew members. He worked hard, took charge when needed, and proved his value in the field. But as time passed, Rick began to develop his own ideas about how to mine, ideas that didn't always line up with Parker's style. The two often clashed, butted heads, and eventually reached a point where working together was no longer sustainable. Rick eventually left Parker's crew and struck out on his own, forming his own mining team. The departure created a rift between the two men. For several seasons, they barely spoke. The once strong bond had fractured under the pressure of competition and differing visions. But despite their history, when Rick fell on hard times, Parker was still there. In season 14, Rick returned to the Yukon after taking a year off from mining, a break prompted by deep personal struggles. He admitted to hitting rock bottom, emotionally and financially. At that point, he had nothing, no crew, no equipment, and no claim. He was starting from scratch. One of the few positives during that dark period, Rick later revealed, was reconnecting with Parker. He admitted to shutting down and cutting off those around him, including Parker. But when he finally made the difficult decision to come back in the spring, Parker was there, and their conversation meant more than Rick expected. Parker had heard the rumors, the talk that Rick might never return. But he had always responded with quiet faith, "Rick is a survivor. You're going to see him back here." That unwavering belief resonated with Rick. He later admitted that, despite their ups and downs over the years, Parker knew him better than most. The support he received during that tough time left a lasting impact. "It was really nice," Rick said of Parker's encouragement. "It meant the world." Their reunion wasn't just about words. The two shared a hug, something simple, but symbolically powerful. It was a gesture of mutual respect, recognition of shared history, and perhaps an unspoken acknowledgement that, despite everything, they had both changed. Rick reflected on their early days together, acknowledging that he gave some of his best work to Parker's team. Parker, in turn, admitted that during that same time, he wasn't always at his best. They both remembered how hard everyone worked in those days, and how far they'd come since. Now, Rick is ready to do it all again. He's back in the Yukon, back in the game, and once more putting everything on the line. While their working relationship may never return to what it once was, the personal respect between Rick Ness and Parker Schnabel has clearly endured. Over the years, Discovery's cameras captured the arguments, the tension, and the divide between the two miners. But what was harder to see, and arguably more important, was the bond that never truly broke. Beneath the friction and pride was always a sense of loyalty, forged by years of working side by side in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. Parker Schnabel believed in Rick Ness, even when Rick didn't fully believe in himself. And that belief might have been exactly what Rick needed to come back stronger. In the end, Gold Rush isn't just about ounces of gold or wash plant breakdowns. It's also about resilience, growth, and redemption. And the relationship between Rick and Parker is one of the show's most powerful examples of all three.